That tour was like, that Canadian tour was crazy because like obviously the whole thing was like massive.
Right.
And like that was us stepping into like a completely, because we had played big shows with Alexis before, especially like when we went down to the States. Like it was like, oh man, we're playing like to, you know, like 1,000 kids, or we're like, we had kind of like stepped in that world a little bit, like playing with Every Time I Die. It's like we're playing to 500 kids. Like this is crazy. We're selling a lot of merch. Like, oh okay. But then when we stepped into like playing to 2,000 people, and it was like, oh, we're playing to like 2,000 people like every single night. So we're like selling merch to 2,000 people every single night. And it was like, this is nuts. So that was like, that whole year was like the craziest crash course in like touring and like just like what that world is.
What was the toughest lesson?
I don't even know if there was any tough ones, but that was a big one where like Every Time I Die and Alexis, like kind of like we're just like, this is how you do. Oh, and we had sort of learned from Every Time I Die a lot because we toured with them like in 2005, and that was like the band that we looked up to. Okay. So for us, we were just like, oh, these guys stretch before they play.
Holy shit, man! You lucked out every step of the way. You know what I mean? Amazing like, mentors.
Yeah, like just like seeing these kind of things and being like, oh, Andy, you're straight edge, like cool, and like Keith, you're like really rad and you write cool lyrics, and like it was just like. That was when Rat Boy was in the band, so like, you know, us being straight edge as well, like it was like, oh, cool. Right. Like we had these like cool dudes, and then by the time the like Alexis tour happened, like that was where I met their tour manager, and he was just like, I'm gonna teach you how to tour. Like I'm gonna teach you how to like hustle merch. I'm gonna teach you like how to count money. I'm gonna teach you like everything. Like here's how you should settle a show. Here's how you should do. So this is like, for me, I'm like 26. I'm like kind of like, you know, new to some of this. He's like, this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. Like, it was the best.
That's amazing, man.
And it was watching those guys like also crush a tour like in a van and trailer, and like,
because that's the album that really kicked them off, right? Like
yeah, that was when like. For ETID, that was when like Gutter Phenomenon was coming out. So Hot Damn was already like really big, and then that was when like next round of like you know, next level kind of stuff was happening. Mm-hmm. So it was like also seeing these guys like doing really well, and like same with like Alexis, like they like how they ran their business was just like so like eye opening. Yeah. But then at every different level. So like Canada was obviously like really big, and then we went to the States where like the shows were, you know. There was like 300 people at a show, or like sometimes there'd be like under 100 people like in a weird town in Kentucky. And so
it's weird, right?
That's when we were like learning like what like a real like 40-day US grinder tour is. Right. And that's where you're like, oh, okay, so you do Canada and you like, it's sick and you like make all this money and you like kind of pay off all your bills and you do all this stuff, but then you go to work. Drive across like 60 hours across America and like you play to no one. Right. And like that's the reality for everyone. And Monine was on that tour too, and we were like Alexis, Monine, and us like touring America, and we were just like, but you guys are like the sickest bands. Like you guys are like killing it, but even like here it like doesn't translate.
Doesn't matter. Well, it's funny because like I've got after Gord Downey died. There was a guy locally that put up some photos, and it was photos of, at one point, Lorne Michaels had taken them over to New York to try to push him in the States. Oh, okay. And I think they were on Saturday Night Live or something, but while they were in New York, they had played at a couple of, like, underground clubs, and there was a guy locally who had just happened to wander into one of these clubs, and there's the Tragically Fucking Hip playing to 6 people.
Oh, totally. Right. We've played that show in Manhattan where you're like playing the basement and there's like 10 people. Right. And you're like, man, we're at a point in our career where like we play to like 1,000 people like in other cities.
It's humbling, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And that was like the big thing that was really cool to see was like, oh yeah, but you're still grinding. Like you're still just the punk band when you show up. And Dow was driving, you know, and it was like, yeah, they got off the bus and they got in the van and trailer. And then it was like sound guy, merch guy, touring.